Welcome to the Whole Enchilada, a community of high achievers that fight the status quo, rebel against mediocrity, and make life happen. Let's go. Today, we are going to be talking about the number one predictor of success. If you're listening to this podcast and you are part of the Whole Enchilada Network, that means you have big aspirations, big goals, you're having big influence on those around you, and you're on a journey for the biggest life you can possibly have. So what is the number one predictor of you succeeding on that journey? I would argue that the number one predictor of success in business, in life, is your ability to master your calendar. Now, a lot of us have heard a lot about time blocking, and the truth of the matter is a lot of us have fought time blocking. The majority of the people in our network are entrepreneurs. We have this innate burning desire inside of us to be our own boss, the master of our own schedule. And the truth is the majority of us went down this path of entrepreneurship in pursuit of freedom. We wanted the ability to decide when we started work. We wanted the ability to decide what days we took off. We wanted the ability to work from remote locations. And it's interesting to me that as I decided to go down this path of entrepreneurship in pursuit of freedom, in some ways I created my own trap. Day one of being an entrepreneur, your calendar is clear, 100% free. You have complete freedom because you have no other obligations. Well, as you continue to create momentum in your business as an entrepreneur, your calendar starts becoming more and more restrictive. And in the end, as you get more and more success as an entrepreneur, you actually start feeling like or becoming a prisoner of your own entrepreneurship. And that is a result of not being a master of your calendar and making sure that you have the most important priorities on your calendar and holding yourself accountable to those. The most successful people are the most productive, not the busiest. How many people do you know that are always telling you how busy they are? Oh, I'm so swamped. I'm so busy. I've got all these things going on. Yet their productivity is not at the highest of levels. On the other side of that, how many times have you met somebody that their productivity seems to be off the chart? They're crushing it. They're having a killer year after year after year, yet their stress levels remain low. And they tend to be posting pictures on Instagram of them on vacation every other month or something like that, where there's this huge contrast of one person is incredibly busy, drowning in their work, yet their production is low. On the other side of that, again, you have that person that their productivity is off the charts, yet they seem to have more freedom of time in their world. I would dare argue that if we pulled out both those people's calendars and looked at them, they would look significantly different. They might both look full of things, but the things on their calendars would be different. So this was a lesson that I learned several years ago, and I'm going to walk you through specifically how I would approach putting together your calendar and holding yourself accountable to it this year. It's something you can put in place right now. In fact, it's a perfect time to do it as we commence a new year and making sure that your calendar matches your goals. I will tell you that when I learned this lesson, it came at an opportune time within my career where I was feeling overwhelmed. And this is something I continue to work on mastering in my own life to become a master of my schedule. One of the top leaders in my organization right now, I love it. Every time he leaves me a message, every time we're talking, he starts the conversation with, I am a master of my schedule, because he is on that journey now of learning to master his schedule at a higher level as he takes on more and more responsibilities. A few years ago, I had a colleague of mine approach me and he asked me, hey, would there be a day that I could just follow you around from meeting to meeting? I want to get a feel for what the flow of your day looks like, because I see you managing all these businesses. And I just need to see how you're doing it because I'm overwhelmed trying to run my one business. And ultimately what I told him, I said, you don't need to follow me around for a day. Let's just pull up my calendar and I'll show you what the flow of my day looks like. And he was surprised to see a few things on my calendar that weren't necessarily appointments or reactionary items, which seemed to fill his calendar. A lot of the things on my calendar, which I'll walk you through again today, were more around planning and prepping and foreseeing and getting clarity on what are those most important things and how am I going to accomplish them, other than those reactionary items of I've got to leave this big blank space in my calendar because I don't know what's going to come up in my day mentality. So let's walk through this a little bit. So at the end of every year, so we just went through this process at the end of 2020, approaching 2021. The very first thing that I do every year when I start looking at my own calendar is I go to Barnes & Noble and I buy a cheap calendar off of the rack. It doesn't matter what it is. I tend to get something with travel pictures on it because I love to travel. But I know what you're thinking now. This is not the calendar I use on a day-to-day basis, but I need a blank slate on which I can sit down and put my personal non-negotiables on first and get input from my family on. Then I convert it to my digital calendar. I do operate off of a digital calendar, but let me walk you through this process. So the very first thing I do when I get that wall calendar is I go to my kids and my wife and my family, and we sit down and we say, what are the most important things that we're going to do as a family this year? We have a lot of traditions that we like to do as a family vacation wise, and we make sure that we get clarity on exactly what those vacations are, when we're going. I look at every day my kids are out of school for the upcoming year. So I know what days they're out of school, so I can try to coordinate my days off those same days and our vacations those same days. So the very first thing I'm doing is I'm getting my personal non-negotiables on that calendar. Once I've got all those vacation days planned, that's when I convert to my digital calendar and I start building the rest of my calendar off of that digital calendar. So the very first thing I want you to focus on is asking yourself this question: what are my personal non-negotiables that are important to me on a personal level this year? Now, the reason I think it's important, and one of the books I'm going to be referencing in our conversation today is The One Thing by Gary Keller. If you have not read this book, I highly recommend it. It's one of the most impactful books I've read on getting clarity on priorities and executing on them. The reason I think it's important to start with your personal non-negotiables is as entrepreneurs who are driven for success, the number one thing that we tend to push aside in pursuit of success is our personal non-negotiables, whether that's vacation time, whether that's time for your health, going to the gym, whether that's being available on your kids' days off, whatever that is, tends to be pushed aside if we don't pre-plan for it and protect that time. So the number one thing that goes on your calendar are those personal non-negotiables. Here's a list of some of the personal non-negotiables that are on my personal calendar. Vacation days. If any of you know me, you know that I've got to have that next adventure on the books or I go crazy. I even go so far as where it's possible. This year's a little bit different with COVID still in play, is not knowing what the travel restrictions are. But anywhere that I know I'm going to have the ability to go, we actually pull the trigger, get the plane tickets, identify the hotels. That way I'm fully committed to those vacation days. Next thing is days off. What days are my kids out of school and how do I coordinate time with them? Number 3 is one-on-one time that I want with my kids and my wife. So I get every date night on the calendar. For me personally, I have 4 daughters. So one of the things that I try to do every single week is a one-on-one date night with one of my kids. That way, every month, each of them is getting a one-on-one date with me in addition to all of our other family time, as I really want that one-on-one time with those kids. So that's on my calendar. The other thing that's important for me is my personal workouts. So making sure that those are on my calendar on a day-to-day basis, exactly what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, and what that looks like. So those are some examples of those personal non-negotiables that are the very first thing that go on my calendar in approaching the year. Now, I know this is going to feel counterproductive to a lot of you that have huge business goals this year, because your inclination is to put those business things on your calendar first. But I will tell you that if you put your business on the calendar first, that will take a priority over the things that are personally important to you, and really protect that sanity, and is truly in alignment with what we're trying to accomplish here at the Whole Enchilada, of creating a balanced life across all aspects, not just business. The second thing that goes on my calendar is my planning time. This is my opportunity to put my CEO hat on when I am the business owner and really look at the bigger picture. A lot of times we get so caught up in the day-to-day execution where we become a technician within our business that we lose sight of the bigger picture. So it's really important for us to know exactly when it is that I'm wearing my technician hat and I'm executing on the game plan, as opposed to when you have your CEO hat on, when you're taking a step back and looking at your business and your progress and your strategy from a bigger perspective. So here's how I do my personal planning time on my calendar. At the end of every year, I time block 2 full days where I'm doing nothing but doing planning for my businesses and for my personal life, really getting clarity on my goals. And those 2 full days are nothing but wearing that CEO hat of saying, what am I trying to accomplish in life, and how are my businesses, what must happen within my businesses to achieve that and create that life that I'm trying to design. Then I go to each month. Every month I take half a day. Generally, I do this on a Saturday where I take half a day and I really put the bookends on the previous month. What did I learn? How did I close out? How did I perform? And then the bookend at the beginning of what must I accomplish in the month that's coming up for me to be on track to hit my goals. So again, it's 2 days at the end of every year. And then each month I take half a day to reconnect with that game plan. Then each week I have a 1-hour meeting with myself. Me personally, I time block this Sundays at 5 o'clock, where I take 1 hour to do the exact same thing. Put the bookend on the week prior. What happened? What progress did I make? What did I learn? What adjustments do I need to make? And then I look at the week coming up. What must I accomplish this week for me to be on track to hit my goal? The last planning piece that goes on my calendar is what I call close out my day, which is a 15 to 20 minute meeting with myself at the end of every day, where I do the bookends on my day. What happened today? Who did I meet with? What commitments did I make? Do I need to delegate any of those tasks to my assistant or people on my team to execute on those? Do I need to write any thank you notes for people I met with? Then I look at the day coming up. Who am I meeting with? Do I need to confirm any appointments? What's on my success list? So when I wake up tomorrow and walk into my office at the end of my personal morning routine, I know exactly what I must execute on to make progress on my long-term goals in that day and in that moment. So planning time is the second thing that goes on your calendar, both on a yearly, a monthly, a weekly, and a daily basis. That should be on your calendar as an appointment with yourself. The purpose of your calendar is not only to have appointments with other people. The majority of the appointments on my calendar are either with myself or with my direct reports that I work with on a day-to-day basis. Now, the third thing that goes on your calendar, and notice this is number 3 for me, where for a lot of us, this tends to be the first thing that goes on your calendar. This is actually number 3, is what is that most important, highest productivity activity that must happen within your business to drive your business forward. For those of you that have read The One Thing, this would be your one thing, your highest dollar productive activity, or the most important thing that's going to progress you and your business forward. So let me give you a couple examples here. As a lot of you know, the majority of my time is spent on leadership and leading people within my organization. So the most important things that are on my calendar on a day-to-day basis are my one-on-one meetings with my direct report leaders, those leaders that are leading others within my organization. Is I make sure that every single one of those meetings is on my calendar and it's a repeatable event. The second thing that my people are relying me on is having my thumb on the pulse of the market, the industry, where things are going. And so it is important for me to have very clear study time on my calendar. So I have that on time blocked on my calendar as well as one of my one things. So if you're in sales, a lot of you as entrepreneurs, you're either sales agents or in some element of sales. More than likely, that one thing that's going to be on your calendar is lead generation and those sales appointments that you're going on. A lot of times I get pushback from salespeople saying, well, how do I put a sales appointment on my calendar in November, which is 11 months from now, if I don't know who I'm going to be meeting with? Well, if it's not on your calendar, the likelihood of you finding the person to meet with is very slim. The idea is now with your time block lead generation time, it becomes a game of not necessarily closing that sale, but finding the person that you're going to meet with to give your value proposition to. For a lot of you that are in the creative world, that may be time blocking time to write, to paint, whatever that looks like. Scheduled on my calendar, as you guys know, I'm very passionate about the whole enchilada and what we're trying to accomplish with this network. Is I have a time blocked appointment with myself for content creation every week, where I'm really thinking through what is the message that I need to portray to our community this week to help them progress. So that is the third thing that goes on your calendar, is what is your one thing? What is your highest priority that you must commit to, that if everything else falls by the wayside, that if I get those things done, I know my business will be moving forward. So as a quick review, number one thing that goes on your calendar is your personal non-negotiables. Number two is your planning time. Number three is get your one thing, your highest dollar productive priority activities on your calendar. So when I meet with an entrepreneur or someone asks me to coach them on their business, one of the first things that I'm going to ask them after I get clarity on what they're trying to accomplish is, let's review your calendar. And the question becomes, does your calendar match your goals? So a lot of you in the whole enchilada community, you just finished setting goals. And if I know you, and I think I do, you set big goals for 2021. The question I would ask yourself is, get your calendar out and ask yourself, does my calendar reflect the results that I'm committed to create in this year? If the answer is no, then it's time to go back and reanalyze your calendar. Now, I'll make one last comment around this, because there was a point of overwhelm after I started using this technique within my own world of, at some point, my calendar could not fit anything else on it. So anytime I started a new business or picked up a new initiative, basically what I would do is say, okay, what are the activities that must happen for me to accomplish this? I'd take those activities, I'd look at my calendar, I'd look for a blank spot and say, okay, well, it looks like there's a blank spot on my calendar Tuesday afternoon at 2 and Thursday morning at 10. And I'd place those things in there. Well, at some point, you run out of space on your calendar that you see a new initiative, an important thing that you want to take on. And then you look at your calendar and there are no spaces for you to put those important tasks for you to drive that initiative forward. So in essence, if you're approaching it that way, you've either got to take something else off your calendar that may be a priority as well to put that piece in there. So one of the things that I had to learn, and I do this at the end of every year, is I actually do a process called I deconstruct my calendar, where I actually strip it all the way down to, even if a lot of those appointments worked well for me the previous year, I strip it all the way down to a blank canvas to rebuild it back up, because I don't want today's initiatives, today's priorities to be pushed aside because yesterday's priorities or initiatives already are taking that space on my calendar. Now, it doesn't mean that I get rid of yesterday's initiatives, but it forces me to ask the question of these two priorities, which one really is a primary priority in my world that helped me achieve my long-term goals? Is this something that I'm just excited about because it's in the heat of the moment? I heard someone talking about it and I see a pathway of me being able to accomplish it, but it's not really in alignment with my long-term goals. So that process of deconstructing my calendar and then building it back up helps me reprioritize those top things within my world. And then if there still are items that I feel like should be on my calendar that I don't have room for, it means I've got a leverage problem in my world. I'm missing a person, a who in my world can handle or do some of these things that are on my calendar, which will free up time for me to do these other items that I don't seem to find a way to get on my calendar. So if you're feeling overwhelmed with your calendar, once you've built this up, it may be a process of deconstruction, reprioritizing, and reconstructing your calendar back up using that same technique of personal non-negotiables, planning time, and getting clarity on your one thing. The last thing with this is you can have an extremely beautiful calendar with all of your priorities on there. But if you don't protect your calendar and don't protect your time blocking, it does not matter how beautiful of a calendar you have. So once you've got that calendar built, it will take you a couple weeks of meticulously protecting that time before you create the cadence and commitment to your calendar. So it's going to feel clunky. It's going to feel restrictive for the first couple of weeks, but I promise you as your partner that if you can commit to protecting your time block and moving forward and holding yourself accountable to that, an increased level of freedom and enjoyment will show up in your world, because it has for me. And again, this is an ongoing process that you need to commit to for the rest of your life. Your people around you will thank you. Your future business self will thank you. So that is my comments on the number one predictor of success. If you take the opportunity to do that with your calendar, I'm predicting great success for you in 2021. Looking forward to being part of that success with you. And don't forget, go live life on your terms.